Bug exterminators of Reddit, what was your "we gonna need a bigger boat" moment? Pulled back insulation in a crawl space to track termite damage. About 100 plus baby juvenile cottonmouths came out from where the drive end wasn't hooked up properly, keeping them nice and warm and moist in the insulation as fall approached. I'm only a termite exterminator. Got out that crawl space quicker than lightning. To this day I'm sure the termites and snakes are living under there happily ever after. Got called out to a house that had a roach problem. So I walk in the house and you could barely see the color of the walls and ceiling for all the roaches. It was literally raining roaches from the ceiling. The people inside just sitting around like it's just a normal Monday and laughing about catching roaches falling from the ceiling. Without a doubt the most disgusting thing I've encountered. Edit. Forgot to mention I opened the cabinets and I'll never forget seeing the hundreds of thousands going across their pots and pans. I was sitting at the dinner table with my family last August and there were lots of wasps around. I hate these duckers to their tiny chitin cores. What was even more suspicious was that they kept coming from underneath the table all the time. I also have the habit of rocking with my chair by pushing myself away from the underside of the table. The moment my legs touched the underside I felt a cracking followed by a buzzing and stinging pain. Well, turns out these flying ducks decided that beneath our dinner table was cozy enough to nest. The moment I went under the table to see how big the nest was, can only be compared to this on scene where Ripley meets the alien when it comes out from the shadows. Spent the summer between high school and college working for a local, family-run, exterminating company. Nice gig. Residential treatments during the day, mosquito fogging at night, and the occasional dairy farm treated for flies and rats. One day I'm at one of these dairy farms and enter the milking parlor to spray and set up traps. See a rather large cat across the parlor from the front door. Good for him, I think. Growing fat, eating rodents and whatever else he's caught over the years. I enter the parlor and the cat moves. And I realize the cat is not a cat, but a rat. Easily the size of a 12-15 pound feline. And running down a drainage pipe. Decided that I did not want to be a sacrifice to the Rat King that day and opted out of there fast. Not an exterminator, but this happened to a friend of mine in college. He was in a frat and actually lived in the frat house. During one of the parties they threw a water pipe was broken. They didn't stop the party or really even act like it happened, so there was just water all over the place. Eventually they just shut off the water but didn't call any kind of plumber cleaner for the water that was probably an inch deep on the floor. Instead they set up little stepping stones to make it out the front door without getting in the water. However, because there was so much stagnant water just sitting around, mosquitoes were breeding like crazy. You couldn't be in the house for more than 5 minutes without getting 50 mosquito bites. The worst place I've ever been. They were eventually kicked out of the house when the frat advisor saw what happened. Called the landlord and the landlord had seen what happened. I worked at a gas station on overnights and asked my manager to do something about the spider infestation. I hate spiders. And it was so bad customers started going to other places because these big spiders would build webs over the door in the span of 40 minutes between customers. Plus the entire awning and overhang was just a mess of webs and hanging spider nests. So she goes out and buys some spray. And it barely does anything. So she goes and buys a bunch of spray. And is standing outside one day just spraying the awnings and overhang, the doors, air pump, anyways. There was this large crack in the siding. So she stuck the spray nozzle inside and started spraying. I'd have died. What followed was so bad. I probably would have died from terror. The way she described it, after the screaming stopped and the color came back, was as if someone turned a great big faucet on. Hundreds of spiders just came pouring out like water. Must have been a ton of nests inside there. I'm not an exterminator, but I do bee removals for a living. The most honey I've pulled out of a house was about 250 pounds, 110 kilos. That's about 21 gallons of honey. Here's one of the pieces of honeycomb. From it, I had to leave halfway through to go to Home Depot because I only had 3 5-gallon buckets with me. People sometimes try and kill hives with Raid. While it may be effective in some cases, no one is going to call me when it works. In other cases it backfires spectacularly. For most of her life, the queen is fat to lay eggs. She can fly, but only short distances. So sometimes when you spray a hive, you'll annoy the bees enough for them to abandon the hive and try to start a new one. But the queen is too fat, so they'll only move to another spot in the same house. The workers at the old hive will raise a new queen, and now you have 2 hives. I removed 7 different hives at the same house because the guy never caught on to what he was doing and kept spraying the bees. I was called in to deal with this bug-infested coconut and you'll never believe what I found. Hey guys, can everyone commenting PLS also add which city their stories happened in so I can never move there? Thanks. This article is relevant. Longer version, PDF. More than we were unprepared for the sheer scale of the spider population and the extraordinary masses of both 3-dimensional and sheet-like webbing that blanketed much of the facility's cavernous interior. Estimated 107 million spiders. Walked into a house for a roach startup. The ducking walls moved. They were in the dressers, beds, closets, furniture, not to mention common areas like the kitchen and baths. Hell, they were in the walls. The place was an old rundown 5000 plus SQFT nightmare that I had to clear out single-handedly. 3 months of weekly 2-hour services and I got things under control. Then the rat problem started. I wasn't too heartbroken when the service was cancelled for non-payment. Bedbugs. They're called bedbugs for a reason, choosing to live in the tufts fold seams of your bed to be closer the blood meal while you sleep. In high infestations they'll resort to adjacent furniture, furthermore the windowsill, ceiling, baseboards, closet, not ideal places to hide but will when the ideal areas are overcrowded. I visit an apartment unit for an inspection and the lady opens the door. From the doorway I see bed bugs around the door frame, ceiling, and crawling on her blouse and neck dart. She's oblivious to the problem due to mental health issues in low income housing. I told the landlord this would be a challenge to say the least. I'm not an exterminator but I have a story that I think is relevant. I'd woken up to go to the bathroom, so I'm taking a dump and suddenly, a spider almost the size of a tarantula runs from under me to the door, basically keeping me in with it. I clean up as fast as I can and get ready to try and kill it, which usually for me is throwing a towel on a spider if it's on the ground and stomping on it. I go to pick up the towel and the spider, after 5 or 6 stomps, is still alive and runs from under the towel to the corner of the door. I throw another towel down and stomp again 5 or 6 more times. Again, it's still alive and I end up running to the bathtub to avoid it. It ends up running round the back of the bathtub. I run out the door and my niece ends up killing it months later when it happens to show up on the stairs. Here's another one I just thought of. Residents moved out on us without paying rent, which is what happens every single time. We go to check out the trailer expecting the worst. Basically what you saw in my last post. It's not exactly clean, but it's not trashed either. No power so it's dark and hot. But my co-worker and I go through the trailer front to back and I even said to her, I can't believe it's not trashed. This isn't bad at all. We make our way back towards the door and she starts screaming, what the duck, and totally freaking out. I'm still in the dark inside and she jumps outside in the sun and I see it, her legs are black. I mean ducking, absolutely covered in fleas. Then it hits me. I had pants on and I pulled my pants up and they were all over me too. We ran back to the shop and blew ourselves off with blowers and the shop even had fleas for a week after that. A shop that is nothing but concrete. When I dared to look at the Linux kernel, but hell, much MS code somehow manages to be worse. When I saw that 2 halves of nutshell are not enough to harbor all of the ant colony in my garden during rain season. Beekeeper, but most of us are somehow in the wasp removal business too. Mentor thought he saw a small hornet's nest and took about the precautions of making a dainty wasp trap out of vinegar in an old Sprite bottle. Upon realizing the hellacious magnitude of those little duckers, he filled an outdoor vac with dishwater, set the hose under his gutter, and set the thing to suck. He's already emptied out 3 gallons of hornets. Bye, assholes. Not exactly an answer to your question. We had an exterminator come to our house to deal with a wasp nest under the 2nd story roof overhang. We are inside doing whatever when we hear a loud smack. My sister goes out to see what happened. She comes running back in freaking out, yelling that the exterminator fell from his ladder. We all go out and find him on the ground snoring. He had blood coming out his ear. We call 911 and he gets sent off on a stretcher. Turns out he broke his skull and a few vertebrae in his back. Pretty crazy day. In college I lived in an apartment that had a porch. Above us was another unit with a balcony over our porch. The guys above us were too lazy to take trash out in the winter, so they just put the trash bags on the balcony and they sit there frozen until they took them all to the dumpster. So once spring rolled around, this old garbage thawed out and caught the attention of some critters. This was unknown to us until we were sitting on the porch and maggots literally start raining through the deck planks from above. That was some true nightmare it. A hoarder type older lady passed away and we were called over because of bedbugs. Those insidious little duckers were everywhere. The top and bottom of her old mattress were nearly painted black from digested blood stains and the smell was awful. We flipped the mattress after using a bedbug vacuum only to find a layer of bedbug skins several inches deep all on the floor. Literally tens or hundreds of thousands of bedbug skins. They were in the walls, the outlets, books, shoes, and even inside the home phone. Even the door frame to her apartment had bedbugs in the hinges and under the doormat. That job took a while lol, and unfortunately I've done a few that have been nearly as bad. I've done roach jobs in the basement of complexes where the trash compactors are, and seeing thousands of roaches or massive mice nests with thick layers of turds permeating from under fridges. Nothing gives me more of the creeps than bedbugs. I'm also not an official exterminator, but I'm the unofficial exterminator in the trailer park my family owns. I've got a ton of stories, but here's the two most recent. Several residents complained of a horrible smell coming from a trailer. Oddly enough, the people that actually lived there weren't the ones complaining. My co-worker and I look around and find the general area where it was coming from. We were figuring just a dead rat or something. We break away the underpinning on the trailer and I shine my light in and see claws. Duck, it's a cat. My co-worker starts pulling it out and he says, "This isn't a ducking cat. It was a dead dog directly under these trashy ducks' bed in the main bedroom. It had probably been there for at least a week. I've got a picture of it if anyone wants to hurl." And on that note, I'll leave you with this trailer we just got to deal with. Those little things in the fridge are tiny roaches and I have no idea WTF those worms are. Never seen that before. The amount of horror I'm feeling reading this. Sweet Jesus. Release these poor souls from this damnation. When I lived in Oklahoma, every year around fall, the crickets would come out in droves. You would find them in everything. When they died in mounds and it smelled like pure death and trash. It was awful. Worst part though is they would get in your room and hide and then all of a sudden start their chirping and it's loud. Plus you can't find their little asses because they stop chirping when you start moving around hunting them. I became an expert cricket hunter, moving very swiftly to isolate where they were just so I could get some sleep. Not an exterminator, but we had a horrible infestation of gypsy moth caterpillars last year. It was like walking into a horror movie every time I was outside of the house. We couldn't use the patio because it would just be covered with the things. And as we walked, we'd be squishing them underfoot. The memory of that squishy pop combo under my heel is never going to go away. They stripped the trees of leaves but thankfully didn't kill any. I then started raising muscovy ducks again. Had them a few years back, who eat anything that moves. So even though my neighbors are infested, my yard is gypsy moth caterpillar free.